My name is Lisa Wilson, and I'm 42 years old. On what felt like the end of my entire existence, I sat in that ice-cold private courtroom watching my billionaire husband James demand everything. Our $40 million estate, our offshore accounts, and sole custody of our 12-year-old daughter, Beatrice. His legal team had just presented a psychiatric report claiming I was mentally unstable, a danger to my own child. The judge's hand was moving toward the gavel when suddenly a small voice shattered the silence. It was Beatrice, my baby girl, standing in the back gallery, her voice trembling but clear. "Your Honor," she said, gripping something behind her back. "My father told me never to tell anyone about the game we played with my tablet. But I think you need to see the rules he made." The judge nodded slowly. My heart stopped. What game? What had James made our daughter do? What secret had my baby been carrying alone? Before we continue with the story, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Oh, and drop a comment below, letting us know where you're watching from. "We love connecting with you all." Beatrice walked forward with that same quiet confidence she'd always had. The confidence I'd lost somewhere along the way. She held up her tablet, tapped the screen, and pressed play. The moment that video started streaming onto the courtroom's massive digital displays, the entire room went silent. What appeared on those screens didn't just shock the judge. It destroyed James's carefully crafted lies, exposed a conspiracy so calculated, so vicious, so utterly soulless that I still struggle to believe the man I married was capable of it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand how a man I trusted with my entire life, a man I sacrificed my career and identity for, transformed into the predator who tried to erase me from existence. My life in our Pacific Heights mansion used to feel like a dream. I had a 12,000 square foot home with views of the Golden Gate Bridge, a brilliant daughter who was my entire world, and a husband who I believed cherished me. But looking back now, I realize I was living in a gold-plated prison. Every piece of my life had been engineered, controlled, curated by James Peters. Every morning I woke up at 5:30 a.m., 5:30 in the morning before sunrise. While James was still asleep in our California king bed with its $4,000 Italian sheets, I'd already be in our chef's kitchen preparing his breakfast. Egg white omelet with organic spinach and goat cheese, gluten-free avocado toast, fresh pressed green juice, and dark roast coffee from beans that cost $80 a pound. Exactly how he liked it. No deviation allowed. I made sure his Tom Ford suits were steamed and hanging in his walk-in closet. I made sure his Mont Blanc briefcase was positioned by the elevator. I made sure the driver had his schedule synced. I made sure everything was flawless, because that's what James expected. "No," demanded. That's what I thought being Mrs. James Peters required. By 6:45, I was waking up Beatrice in her bedroom, the one room in that massive house that still felt warm. I'd help her choose her outfit for her private school, brush her long hair into a neat braid, make sure she had her homework packed in her leather satchel, and prepare her favorite breakfast, blueberry crepes with honey and fresh berries from our rooftop garden. We'd sit together at the breakfast nook overlooking the bay, and she'd tell me about the science project she was working on, about the books she was reading, about her dreams of becoming an architect like I used to be. Those morning moments with Beatrice were sacred. They were genuine. They were the only time I felt like myself anymore, like the woman I'd been before I became James's wife. James would descend around 7:30, already dressed in one of those $10,000 suits that made him look like he owned the world. Because in his mind, he did. He'd sit at the head of the table, check his phone, scan through his emails, sip his coffee, and barely acknowledge my existence. Maybe a critique. This coffee is lukewarm. Even when I knew it was the perfect temperature. Maybe a dismissive comment, "You're wearing that?" Even when I'd spent an hour getting ready. Maybe nothing at all. I'd watch him kiss Beatrice on the top of her head, tell her to make Daddy proud at school. And then he'd stride right past me like I was part of the furniture. No kiss, no touch, no "thank you for everything you do, Lisa." Nothing. He'd step into the private elevator with his security detail, and I'd be standing there in that enormous, empty kitchen feeling like I'd vanished. But I told myself it was normal. James was building an empire. He was closing billion-dollar deals. He was under immense pressure. That's what I kept repeating to myself. That's the narrative I force-fed my dying self-worth every single day. I'd given up my architecture career 15 years ago when we got married. I had a thriving practice designing sustainable housing, y'all. I was making 6 figures, winning awards, building something that mattered. But James convinced me that his wife didn't need to work, that my job was to create the perfect home, to be the perfect hostess, to raise the perfect daughter. "You'll have everything you could ever want," he promised me. "You'll never have to worry about money again." So I walked away. I let my license lapse. I let my professional network fade. I let my identity dissolve into being Mrs. James Peters, the billionaire's beautiful wife who smiled at charity galas and stayed silent during business dinners. The mansion was all glass and light, the kind of place magazines called iconic. But most days it felt like living inside a display case. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the bay, reflecting back a woman who looked polished, composed, expensive, and nothing like the person she used to be. Wherever Lisa turned, there was a lens, a sensor, a soft electronic chime reminding her that in this house, nothing went unnoticed. The security system greeted her by name when she walked into the kitchen. Hidden cameras in the corners followed her movements with silent, insect patience. The wall-mounted touchscreens glowed with the day's schedule, the stock market, the temperature of every room. In the pantry, a small screen showed the week's grocery report, every purchase broken down into neat categories with a total at the bottom. Household spending exceeded target by 3.4%. James's note appeared in red. "We need to discuss this." Her phone pinged again. A bank alert. A $52 rideshare she'd taken last week to meet an old colleague for coffee, flagged as unusual spending. She'd forgotten James had disabled her car access that day, claiming the driver needed maintenance. 2 hours later, he'd casually mentioned the ride. Not angry, just precise. "Next time, tell my office," he'd said. "There's no reason to use your own card when everything can be centralized." Centralized. That was James's favorite word. Their home ran on his custom system, Peters One, integrating the locks, cameras, lighting, climate control, even the motion sensors under the marble floors in the entryway. At night, when she padded through the dark to get a glass of water, the floor would blink awake on his phone, a tiny notification announcing that movement detected in primary residence, Lisa. It sounded sterile, almost clinical, but Lisa had felt it like a verdict. Even her footsteps belonged to him. James had made reservations at Saison, the kind of place where dinner cost more than most people's monthly rent, and where silence meant something important was about to happen. Lisa wore the cream Valentino dress he'd had delivered that morning, still in its garment bag, with a note that said only, "Tonight." She'd thought it was romantic, a surprise for their 15th anniversary. The private dining room overlooked the city, all ambient lighting and carefully curated minimalism. James ordered the tasting menu without asking what she wanted. He never asked any more. The sommelier poured a 2005 Chateau Margaux, and James raised his glass with that controlled smile he used during board meetings. To 15 years, he said. Lisa touched her glass to his, searching his face for warmth, for anything that resembled the man who'd proposed to her on a beach in Maui. But his eyes were flat, businesslike. He took one sip, set down his glass, and slid a leather portfolio across the table. "I need you to sign these tonight," he said. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The first document was a non-disclosure agreement, dense with legal language and penalty clauses that started at 7 figures. The second was a separation agreement. The third, divorce papers. Her name was already typed in. The filing date was tomorrow. "James, what is this?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "It's a clean break, Lisa. You'll receive a reasonable settlement if you cooperate. If you don't, this becomes very complicated for you." He said it the way he'd order another course, calm and final. "Our daughter, Beatrice, stays with me, full custody. I've already retained a forensic psychologist who will testify that you're unfit. The documentation is prepared." He gestured to the portfolio. "You have 24 hours to vacate the residence. The locks have been changed. Your personal items will be packed and delivered to whatever address you provide." Lisa's throat closed. "You're freezing me out of my own home?" "It's my home, Lisa. It always has been. Your credit cards are suspended as of an hour ago. Your car access is revoked. The Aspen house, the Napa property, all secured. You'll sign the NDA, accept the settlement, and leave quietly, or I'll make sure you leave with nothing." The sommelier returned to refill glasses. No one was drinking. James checked his watch like he had somewhere more important to be. The Sunset Palms Motor Lodge smelled like disinfectant and failure. Lisa sat on the edge of a bed with a faded floral comforter, staring at her phone as the reality of her situation crystallized into something sharp and suffocating. She'd used the last $63 in her purse to pay for 2 nights. After that, she had nothing. She scrolled through her contacts, names of women she'd had brunch with every month for years. Vanessa Chen, who'd co-chaired the Children's Hospital Gala with her. Margaret Rothstein, who'd vacationed with them in Portofino. Claire Donovan, whose daughter was in the same ballet class as Beatrice. She called Vanessa first. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Lisa left a message, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hey, it's me. Something's happened with James, and I really need to talk. Can you call me back?" An hour later, a text arrived. "So sorry. Dealing with family emergency. We'll reach out soon, XO." Lisa called Margaret. This time the phone was answered, but the voice was clipped, distant. "Lisa, hi. Look, I heard about the separation. James's attorney contacted several of us. I don't think it's appropriate for me to get involved. I'm sure you understand." Click. She understood perfectly. James had already poisoned the well, turned her entire social circle into hostile territory. These weren't friends. They were associates. People whose loyalty could be purchased or whose fear of exclusion from James's orbit outweighed any affection they'd pretended to feel for her. Claire didn't answer at all. Neither did the next 4 people she called. By evening, Lisa's phone sat silent on the nightstand, like evidence of her erasure. She thought about calling her sister in Phoenix, but shame made her fingers freeze over the screen. Rachel had warned her about James years ago, had called him controlling and cold. Lisa had defended him, had gradually let that relationship drift until holiday cards were the only contact they maintained. How could she crawl back now and admit Rachel had been right all along? The motel room's fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Through the thin walls, She could hear a television playing a game show, someone laughing at something. Lisa pulled her knees to her chest and realized with absolute clarity that James hadn't just taken her money and her home. He'd engineered her isolation so thoroughly that she had nowhere left to go. Lisa found the first clue by accident, buried in an email notification that arrived on her old iPad, the one James had forgotten to remotely wipe. A payment confirmation from James's private accountant to Elena Ruiz, their housekeeper of 8 years. $50,000. The memo line read, "Consulting services rendered." Elena didn't consult. She cleaned, cooked, and had always treated Lisa with quiet kindness. Or so Lisa had thought. She started digging, using the login credentials James had never bothered to change on their shared cloud storage. What she found made her stomach turn. Payment records going back 3 months. Elena Ruiz, $50,000. Dr. Patricia Wendell, $75,000. Marcus Chen, the family driver, $30,000. All labeled as consulting fees. All paid through a shell account James used for what he called delicate transactions. Dr. Wendell, Lisa's therapist of 4 years. The woman she'd confided everything to, every doubt, every moment of despair, every admission that she sometimes felt like she was losing her mind in that mansion. James had been paying her the entire time. Lisa's hands shook as she opened another file. Deposition outlines, talking points. Elena's statement was already drafted. Mrs. Peters was frequently disoriented and emotionally volatile. I witnessed her screaming at Beatrice on multiple occasions. I feared for the child's safety. None of it was true. Lisa had never screamed at Beatrice, had never been anything but gentle with her daughter. Dr. Wendell's testimony was worse. Patient exhibits signs of delusional thinking, paranoid ideation, and potential substance dependency. I believe she poses a risk to herself and her child. The therapist had taken Lisa's vulnerability, her admissions made in confidence, and weaponized them into a clinical diagnosis designed to destroy her. Marcus's statement was shorter, but just as devastating. I observed Mrs. Peters leaving the residence at odd hours, behaving erratically, and on one occasion, appearing intoxicated when picking up her daughter from school. Another fabrication. Lisa rarely drank and had never picked up Beatrice while impaired. James hadn't just bought their silence. He'd purchased their betrayal, scripted their lies, and turned the people closest to Lisa's daily life into instruments of her destruction. The depositions were scheduled for next week. These people would sit in front of a judge and swear under oath that Lisa was dangerous, unstable, unfit. And they'd do it convincingly, because James had paid them well enough to sell their souls. Beatrice wasn't supposed to be awake when the woman arrived, but the sound of heels clicking across marble had pulled her from sleep. She crept to her bedroom door and opened it just enough to see down the hallway. Her father stood in the foyer with a woman Beatrice had seen before at the office, the one he introduced as Ms. Hartley, a legal consultant. Tonight she wore a red dress that looked nothing like business attire. "Is she really not coming back?" the woman asked, her voice carrying up the stairs. "Lisa's finished," her father said. "2 more weeks and she'll be a footnote." They disappeared into his study. Beatrice heard the door close, then lock. She waited 20 minutes before padding downstairs in her bare feet, moving silently the way her mother had taught her during their games of hide-and-seek when she was younger. The study door was solid oak, but sound carried through the ventilation grate near the floor. "The deposition transcripts are perfect," Ms. Hartley was saying. "Elena's testimony alone will shred any credibility Lisa has left. And Wendell's psychiatric evaluation is devastating. No judge will give custody to someone documented as delusional and volatile." Her father laughed, actually laughed. Patricia outdid herself. 75,000 well spent. What about Beatrice? What if she says something? She won't. She barely sees her mother anymore, and when this is over, she won't see her at all. Lisa will get supervised visitation at best. And eventually Beatrice will forget she ever had a mother worth remembering. Beatrice felt something cold settle in her chest. She pulled out her tablet from her pajama pocket, the one her father had given her for schoolwork, and opened the voice recorder app. She'd started recording 3 days ago, after the first time she'd seen Ms. Hartley leaving the house at dawn. Just small things at first. Conversations that felt wrong. Comments about her mother that didn't match the woman Beatrice knew. But this was different. This was proof. Over the next week, Beatrice became invisible in her own home. She stayed quiet during meals, nodded when her father asked about school, and pretended not to notice when Ms. Hartley stayed for dinner, then stayed longer. She kept her tablet with her always, recording every conversation she could, building a library of her father's cruelty. No one suspected the 12-year-old girl with the sad eyes was documenting everything. The law office was above a Vietnamese restaurant in the Tenderloin. 3 flights of stairs with peeling paint and a door that stuck when Lisa pushed it open. Sarah Reyes sat behind a desk, buried in case files. Her sleeves rolled up, reading glasses perched on top of her head like a second pair of eyes. She looked up when Lisa entered, taking in the expensive coat and the desperate expression underneath. "You must be Lisa Wilson," Sarah said. "Or should I say Lisa Peters? I Googled you after you called. Your husband's quite the titan." "Ex-husband," Lisa corrected, though the divorce wasn't final yet. "And yes, he is, which is why no one else will take my case." Sarah gestured to the chair across from her. "I don't scare easy, and I don't like bullies, especially rich ones who think money makes them untouchable. Tell me everything." For the next 2 hours, Lisa laid out the whole story. The ambush divorce, the frozen accounts, the manufactured psychiatric reports, the paid testimonies. Sarah took notes in quick, precise handwriting, occasionally asking questions that cut straight to the bone of James's strategy. "He's trying to isolate you financially and socially so you can't fight back," Sarah said finally. "Classic high-net-worth divorce playbook." But he made mistakes. The payments to your therapist and housekeeper? That's witness tampering. The locked access to marital assets before the divorce is final? That's illegal appropriation. And if he's hiding money offshore like you suspect, we can subpoena his financial records. "He has 12 lawyers," Lisa said. "How do we outwork them?" Sarah pulled out a laptop that had seen better days. "I've got a forensic accountant who owes me a favor. Send me every financial document you can access. Bank statements, tax returns, investment portfolios, anything. Even fragments. We're going to find where James buried his money, and we're going to drag it into the light." Over the next 3 weeks, Sarah became the ally Lisa had stopped believing existed. They worked late into the night, tracing shell companies through the Cayman Islands, finding discrepancies in James's declared income versus his actual spending. The accountant, a quiet woman named Ming Chen, discovered a pattern of transfers to a Singaporean holding company that James had never disclosed in his financial affidavits. "He's hiding at least 40 million, Ming said during one meeting, tapping her spreadsheet. "And that's just what I've found so far." Sarah smiled. "Then we've got him." The photos appeared online the morning the trial began, strategically leaked to 3 gossip sites and 2 local news outlets before Lisa had even arrived at the courthouse. The first showed her outside a liquor store at 2 in the afternoon, sunglasses on, looking disheveled. The caption read, "Billionaire's wife caught day drinking while daughter in school." The second was worse. Lisa, sitting alone in her car outside Beatrice's private academy, her face partially obscured with the headline, "Estranged Mother Lurking Near Child's School. Restraining Order Pending?" None of it was real. The liquor store photo was from a day she'd bought a bottle of wine for a dinner party 2 years ago. The school photo had been taken during a completely normal pickup, but the angle and lighting made it look sinister, predatory. Someone had photoshopped timestamps to make them appear recent. By the time Lisa entered the courtroom with Sarah, the damage was done. Reporters lined the hallway, shouting questions about her drinking problem, her erratic behavior, whether she felt remorse for putting her daughter in danger. Sarah gripped her arm and pushed through without comment. But Lisa felt the weight of every camera flash, every accusatory stare. Inside, James sat at the plaintiff's table surrounded by his legal team, looking every inch the concerned father. His lead attorney, Gordon Price, wore a suit that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. He smiled when he saw Lisa, the kind of smile that said he'd already won. The trial opened with Price painting a portrait of Lisa as a woman who'd unraveled. "Your Honor, the evidence will show that Mrs. Peters has become increasingly unstable, neglectful of her duties as a mother, and potentially a danger to herself and her 12-year-old daughter. My client has tried everything to help her: therapy, intervention, patience. But he can no longer stand by while his child is placed at risk." Price displayed the photos on a large screen. The liquor store, the school. Then more Lisa hadn't seen. Her looking gaunt and exhausted outside the motel, her walking aimlessly through a park at dusk. All framed to suggest chaos, addiction, mental collapse. "These are not the actions of a fit parent," Price said, his voice dripping with manufactured concern. "These are the actions of a woman who has lost control." Lisa watched the judge study the images, his expression unreadable, and felt her chances of ever seeing Beatrice again slipping away with every manufactured lie. Victoria Hartley took the stand, wearing a navy suit and pearl earrings, her hair pulled back in a style that screamed competence and neutrality. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, with a voice that carried just the right amount of solemnity. Lisa felt her stomach twist. This was the woman who'd been sleeping in her bed, plotting her destruction. And now she was about to play the role of concerned expert witness. Gordon Price approached with a folder. "Ms. Hartley, can you please state your credentials for the court?" "I'm a licensed child welfare advocate with a master's in developmental psychology from Stanford. I've consulted on over 200 custody cases in the past 8 years." The lie came out smooth as silk. Lisa knew from her research that Victoria had a business degree and worked in corporate consulting, nowhere near child welfare. "And in what capacity did you observe the Peters family?" "Mr. Peters retained me 6 months ago to conduct a home assessment and evaluate the family dynamic. He was concerned about his wife's behavior and wanted a professional opinion on whether it was affecting their daughter." Victoria's expression was perfectly calibrated. Serious, compassionate, reluctant to share bad news. Price nodded. "And what did you observe?" Victoria sighed, as if the memory pained her. Mrs. Peters was frequently absent, both physically and emotionally. On multiple occasions, I witnessed her ignoring Beatrice's attempts at conversation. She seemed distracted, sometimes disoriented. Once, I saw her forget to pick up Beatrice from school entirely. The child waited for over an hour. Lisa gripped Sarah's arm. "That never happened. I was never late." "I know," Sarah whispered. "Let her finish. We'll tear her apart on cross." Victoria continued, warming to her performance. I also observed Mrs. Peters having what appeared to be paranoid episodes. She accused household staff of spying on her, claimed her husband was tracking her movements, and once told me she felt like she was disappearing. These are classic signs of delusional thinking and potential personality disorder. She paused, looking directly at the judge with practiced concern. Your Honor, in my professional opinion, Beatrice Peters would be at significant emotional and psychological risk in her mother's custody. The child needs stability, structure, and a parent who can be fully present. Unfortunately, Mrs. Peters is not capable of providing that environment. The courtroom was silent. Even Sarah looked shaken. Victoria Hartley had just delivered a masterclass in calculated deception, and the judge was writing notes. Victoria Hartley was still on the stand, answering a follow-up question about Lisa's alleged paranoia, when a small voice cut through the courtroom from the back gallery. Your Honor, may I say something? Every head turned. Beatrice stood in the back row, gripping her tablet against her chest, her face pale but determined. James's expression shifted from confident to alarmed in the span of a heartbeat. The judge looked surprised, but gestured forward. Young lady, this is highly irregular. I know, Your Honor, but my father told me never to tell anyone about the game we played with my tablet. He said it was our secret. But I think you need to see the rules he made. James started to rise. Your Honor, my daughter has been under tremendous stress. Sit down, Mr. Peters. The judge's voice was sharp. He looked at Beatrice. Come forward, please. Beatrice walked down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing in the silent courtroom. She handed the tablet to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. There are 12 videos, she said quietly. But you only need to watch the first one. The judge tapped the screen. Beatrice had already queued it up. The courtroom's display monitors flickered to life, and suddenly James's study filled the screens, the timestamp showing 3 weeks earlier. James's voice came through clearly. The deposition transcripts are perfect. Elena's testimony alone will shred any credibility Lisa has left. And Wendell's psychiatric evaluation is devastating. No judge will give custody to someone documented as delusional and volatile. Victoria Hartley's laugh followed. Patricia outdid herself. 75,000 well spent. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Sarah grabbed Lisa's hand, squeezing hard. On screen, the conversation continued. James and Victoria discussing exactly how they'd manipulate the evidence, crush Lisa into poverty, and erase her from Beatrice's life. What about Beatrice? Victoria's recorded voice asked. She won't be a problem. When this is over, she won't see her mother at all. Lisa will get supervised visitation at best, and eventually Beatrice will forget she ever had a mother worth remembering. The judge stopped the video. His face was stone. Mr. Peters, Ms. Hartley, you will remain seated. Bailiff, please ensure they don't leave this courtroom. He looked at Gordon Price. Counselor, I strongly suggest you distance yourself from your client immediately. James's billion-dollar empire collapsed in the time it took a 12-year-old girl to press play. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.